being a legacy brand, we do have a lot of customers who've been buying our products for many, many years, and they don't want their product to change. So we've got to make sure that we do have ranges that can accommodate for those needs. At the same time, we also do need more innovative products for the younger market, where styling and fashion is probably a little bit more relevant to them than people that have been in the industry for a longer time.
Hey, welcome to the Tradies Success Podcast. On this podcast, you're going to hear real life stories from trade business owners to minimize the mistakes you're going to make, maximize profit, create more time freedom, and minimize emotional overwhelm. So hit subscribe and follow us now and enjoy the episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Tradies Success Podcast. A very special episode today. We're here with Matt Simons, the merchandise manager from KingGee, and we're going to hear about KingGee's story, some of the innovation that's happening, and why you really need to consider proper safety gear when you're working on site. So thanks for joining us, Matt.
Awesome. Thanks very much for having me.
So KingGee is nearly 100 years old, right? Like, I'd love to dive back into the history of KingGee, the story, and just start with that. If you wouldn't mind giving us a bit of a brief history.
Yeah, no problem. No worries. So KingGee was actually founded in 1926 by Mr. Robert Adcock. Was founded out of Sydney. It was actually pretty interesting where the word KingGee came from. At the time, King George was, the British monarch who was overseeing Australia at the time, and if somebody thought they were up themselves, you might think, they were acting a little bit like King George. And an abbreviation or slang of that was, you might say someone thinks they're actually acting a bit like KingGee. And Mr. Adcock overheard the slang term getting used out on the streets, and he thought, oh, what a great name for workwear. And that's how KingGee became the name it is today. And almost 100 years on, and the name's still strong in Australia.
Yeah, it's definitely a strong brand, and I'm sure all the tradies listening have definitely either worn it or know about it for sure. So 100 years ago, do you know what his role was? Like, was he in merchandise? Was he a tradesperson, construction? What was the origination of that?
I think he had been involved in the fabric industry for quite some time, and you realised that obviously, industry was starting to boom in Australia at the time. There was a need for the workwear market. I guess one of the most iconic things was the building of the Sydney Harbour Bridge back in the day, and that was all done in the KingGee coveralls. Obviously workwear started very differently as to what we see it today. It was very heavy fabrics, very plain, no high-vis or even safety elements to it. It was basically just your navy canvases or your khaki canvases, predominantly used in construction or in a bit of farm work. So it's definitely come a really long way since those early days.
How cool is that to be a brand associated with such an iconic building in Australia? So, yeah, it's awesome. So with KingGee, obviously over the 100 years, we talked about how it was back in the day. What's some of the innovation that's been happening through workwear in general? And what's driving that change, do you feel?
I think there's probably been a really big shift in the market over the last 10 to 15 years. Obviously Australia is quite a unique market with a very hot and heavy climate. So cotton has always been the predominant fabric used in all of the garments. However, we're seeing a shift now into more synthetic fabrics. We can make stronger and lighter fabrics which perform just as well as cotton. The worker today obviously demands a lot more out of their workwear. Guys are putting in a really hard shift on site, and you're almost like a performance athlete. So you want your apparel to perform the same way as if you were wearing your gym gear, I guess. So trying to make fabrics as lightweight as possible, as comfortable as possible, yet still standing up to the rigors of workwear is, I guess, a formula that we're all chasing and trying to improve on every season.
Yeah, I know definitely some of the workwear I've worn in the past, when it can't breathe properly, you just end up sweating all day, end up stinking way worse than normal. Yeah. So what's some of the technology that is being brought into the most modern types of work clothes to allow us to work hard but not, overheat?
Yeah, I think if you look at the journey where I said everything was predominantly cotton-based fabric, so a shirt weight used to be around about a 190 GSM fabric. That kind of shifted down to a 145 GSM, which has now become the norm. To make the garments perform well, we bedded in a ribstock weave, which gives you a lot more tear and tensile strength within the garment. After kind of your cotton, we're now going into some synthetic nylon and nylon elastane blends. We can blend in things like moisture control systems where it pulls all the moisture to the top end of the fabric to help it evaporate, to keep you a lot cooler. Embedding things like elastane for stretch is really fantastic. There's a lot of different fabrics out there. We have specialty fabrics like your flame retardant fabrics to help keep the guys safe from any arc flashes or burning. So fabrics come a really, really long way since you're, predominantly cotton-based fabrics, which is what we used to find in the Australian market.
Yes, that's so interesting. What do you think's the main drivers that have initiated that innovation in the products that you have created? I know for me, looking back, it was definitely the heat factor was one, like how much you sweat. Some clothes that I got in the past was they actually had a weird smell. Like they would actually create, like with the body odor or whatever, it created a really weird smell, which wasn't great. Yeah. And, other things were they would discolor, rip easily, those sort of things. So I'd love to dive into each of those individual factors and what it was that makes it like that, but also, what's the technology that fixes it?
Sure. I guess if you think back just what's kind of driving the technology, I think, as tradespeople, you tend to lead quite an active lifestyle. So, you're buying brands, if you're a snowboarder or a surfer or, a mountain biker. So you're getting exposed to fabrics and technical fabrics outside of the workwear industry, which you get used to of how those fabrics perform. So we're now able to incorporate those technical fabrics back into workwear because the end wearer is now comfortable wearing synthetic fabrics. I mean, if you think of odor, cotton's a natural fiber, so it tends to breathe quite well. But once cotton gets wet, it doesn't tend to moisture-wick very well. So it's great in that initial stage of keeping you cool. But once you do perspire, it tends to hold on to that sweat. And that's what obviously causes the bacteria and that odor buildup. Whereas if you use a moisture-wicking technology in a polyester or a nylon, it actually helps get the garment drier a lot cooler. So you don't have that moisture buildup, which reduces that odor or that bacteria buildup within the garment. It's really important around color fastness or how long the garment can stay high-vis for. Again, a cotton tends to lose its color fastness quite quickly, whereas if you're blending the fabrics with a polyester or nylon, those fabrics absorb and hold the dye or the inks for a lot longer. So if you start blending fabrics, you can keep that high-vis a lot longer. So the color fastness tends to stay in the garment and it can perform at the highest level for a lot longer than what we've seen in the past. So, I think with all modern technology and what we can now do to fibers and fabrics, it's just come such a long way thanks to technology and other industries where we're able to tap into their insights and their information that they're bringing to the market.
Have you ever considered aerodynamics to be able to get through the job quicker?
Yeah, or I wouldn't quite call it aerodynamics, but I think having stretched panels in the correct places, if you think of our new Kujura, it's a fantastic, strong four-way stretch. So having stretched panels in the gusset of the pants, if you are taking a big step forward, you don't want your pants to restrict that step that you're taking. So you want the garment to be able to stretch. So blending Kujura stretch fabrics or elastane stretch into key areas of the garment allows that flex and mobility of the garment to allow your body to move the way you're intending it to do.
Oh, that's definitely important for climbing through a roof. Like when, as electricians, if you're getting, or any trade in a roof or difficult confined spaces where you've actually got to try and twist around things. And I've definitely ripped some holes in my pants, without that technology. So, yeah. Awesome.
We definitely are seeing a lot more stretch being incorporated into garments. It's becoming almost a standard. So it's more common to find a garment that doesn't have it as opposed to a garment that does have it in today's day and age.
Yeah, and even just regular jeans, I think, has that elastane in them, and I prefer that myself.
100%.
So have you noticed that through different trades, in different areas of the construction industry, there's different requirements? And if so, what are some of the examples that you've got in your workwear range for the different types of trades?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think historically the color that people wear has determined what their trade is. So electricians tend to have worn the navy. Your carpenters would have worn your khaki kind of colorways. Your landscape gardeners tend to have gone with your bottle greens or your green colorway. So we do still tend to see that trending a bit. In terms of what people are actually looking for on site, if you're in a heavy mining industry, you obviously want something that's quite tough and durable. Whereas if you're a construction worker, you might be able to be wearing a polo and some shorts as potentially a residential construction worker, should I say, as opposed to having to wear a heavy-duty coverall. So depending, I guess, on the job that you're doing, we definitely have a wide variety of different ranges to suit those needs. And I think that's probably one thing that's evolved the most within the KingGee range is having product to suit such a wide variety of different workforces, or careers, because no longer are we just doing one range of clothing, but we've probably got about 15 to 20 different ranges to cater for everyone from heavy duty mining through to, your traffic controller or a residential chippy. So yeah, it's, we've definitely got a range that's suitable for whatever occupation you're in.
Very cool. And so another big part of what KingGee is in the boots and the footwear. So obviously boots have been around forever as well. How's the boot technology changed over time?
Yeah, it's come a long way from just having your traditional slip-on gusset boot. We know that boots are really important for your safety. Foot health is also a really big thing. We're one of the few brands that do both apparel and footwear. So our footwear is a new addition to the business. It's probably been going for about 12 or 15 years, and we've definitely seen our footwear range come a long way. Again, we do everything from a sports style comp jogger, which is more of your sport inspired shoe for your warehouse and logistics, all the way up to your heavy duty mining or construction kind of boots. We now have things like D3O, which is an impact resistance foam. So when you get struck on the side of the boot, it hardens up to protect your ankles. We use things like anatomic rebound zones in the heel to give you that extra rebound when you're walking. Almost, again, if you think of your Adidas running shirt, gives you that same kind of energy rebound in it. We have either composite or steel toe caps, depending on the industry that you're in. We use Kajira on the top of the boot, which is a really hard-wearing fabric, but also allows breathability to try and keep your boots nice and cool. And we know tradies sometimes, there's nothing better than kicking your boots off at the end of the day. So we even have a little kicker on the back of the boot to help you kick those boots off. For those lazy people like I am, you've got the zip down the side. There's a lot of technology that goes into a boot, all the way from your outer sole, all the way to your uppers and, even your midsole in the boot.
Yeah, I'm not kidding, but it was literally a month ago that I had my boots on. Different brand, kicked off the boot and the whole sole came off. So that's an example of not a very well-designed boot. So what is some of the other things that, that you've learnt over time with boots, but also with some products that might be out there that could be a risk to people because they're presented to be a work boot? Or they are just, going to have issues because of various reasons that you've been able to identify and incorporate into why your boots are the way they are?
I think fit's probably the most important. I think an ill-fitting boot does more damage to your foot than anything else. So in relation to that, we partner with APOD, the Australian Podiatry Council, to make sure that all of our boots are endorsed to the level that they need to be. It's done by external people or external podiatrists. We also take men's and women's footwear very seriously and actually making two different boots. We don't just take a male's boot down into a female size because we know anatomically a female foot is very different to a male foot. So the mold of the shoe has to be very different to fit that. So for us, the first and foremost is making sure the boots fit correctly. And we spend a lot of time developing our molds. And the last, to make sure our fit of the boots is probably the most important because that's what gives you the foot the support that it's going to need. You don't want a loose fitting boot. So that's really, really important. And the things, obviously your outer sole, we need to make sure that that's got the highest slip resistance so people don't slip on, any kind of floor hazards. So we rate those to an SRC rated slip resistance. Even the midsoles that we use, we try and use a really good PU for that absorption and impact. Even things like the Kevlar stitching on the side of the boot to make sure the stitching doesn't actually disintegrate when chemicals are splashed up the boot or whether you're in harsh conditions. So all of those, you don't want a boot falling apart. There's obviously a really big safety hazard. So ensuring everything from the slip resistance to the uppers that we use, the comfort of the footbed is all of the highest quality standards to make sure your foot's secure and comfortable at all times.
That's awesome. And so if someone that's just starting in the trade or it's an employer looking to provide a shoe and provide suggestions to getting the right boot for them, what are some of the things to look out for that might be a red flag? Like the apprentice might say, oh, I just really want these boots because they look cool. What are some of the things that, we need to look for that be like, actually, they do look cool, but these are important? Red flags.
I think obviously making sure it's fit for purpose. So if you're an electrician, you want an EH-rated boot, an electrical hazard kind of boot. If you're in the FR space, you want something that's tested to FR standards. If you're in a very slippery kind of environment, you want to make sure that you've got the high slip resistant sole. You do get different levels of that. So I guess understanding the environment you're going to be using the boot for or in is very important to lead you to the specific boot that you need. So soles may rate from 160 degree rating up to a 300 degree C rating on the outer sole. So depending on obviously the climate, the end will determine that. If you need a lot of ankle support or you're in very rough terrain, you want to go with a higher inch boot to give you more support around the ankles. At the same time, if you're doing warehouse and logistics and you're jumping in and out of a car, you might want something slightly lower cut which is going to help, obviously getting in and out of the vehicles. Or even if you're doing a lot of mileage and you're in warehouse and logistics and doing a lot of walking, you want to make sure that you've got that really nice soft EVA midsole, like what you'll find in your running shoes, just to help support and cushion. Because, we've done research and you can find people working up to 20,000 steps quite easily a day, when they're walking around a warehouse. It's sport-inspired footwear.
Yeah, I used to work at the casino doing fire systems, and we literally would walk all day just checking fire systems and running cables and whatever. So definitely want to be able to do that. So with the regulations and standards of workwear nowadays, it's obviously drastically different to what it was 20 years ago. What is some of the things that, employers might need to know and tradespeople themselves need to know around who's responsible, what are the regulations, and how can we both work together to make sure that there's a safe work environment?
Yeah, I guess, we do have some Australian standards that we have to adhere to. So your high-vis safety standards, the same within footwear with the amount of impact that your toe caps can have. So we ensure from a KingGee perspective that every product that we put out to market does adhere to the relevant standards that we're using. In some cases where there may not be an Australian standard, we look to the international markets, whether it be Europe or American, we pick up off their standards, but we make sure that every product that we bring into our range complies with the necessary standards for that industry. So we do everything from high-vis testing of, the compliance of the colors of the fabrics, to the tapes, to the tear and tensile strength, and then obviously to the pressure that's placed on a toe cap. We make sure that everything is properly certified. When you start looking at specialty fabrics like in that FR space, there's probably 4 or 5 different standards that we'd have to adhere to from all different places around the world. So we spend a lot of time and money and effort to make sure that all of our products adhere to whatever standard is relevant for that product, and that we can safely call it out and ensure that the workers will return home safe, knowing that we've put the right product on the people.
Thanks for sharing that. So with boots and workwear, what sort of duration should we be expecting? Is it different for different trades and different conditions? And how does someone know when it's time to replace their clothes to align with the regulations and standards?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There's no hard and fast rule. Unfortunately, different people working in different environments will get a different results on the same kind of garments. What we do though is make sure that every single garment that we bring into our business has been tested to our standards. We test things for color fastness, which refers back to the amount of a garment will fade. We test to the tear and tensile, which is the amount of force you can put on the fabric before it breaks. We obviously test the reflective tape. We also test for shrinkage and the different wash conditions. So provided someone adheres to the wash labels and the wash care and care conditions, we'd expect the garments to be lasting at least 8 to 12 months, if not longer. But again, it depends on every specific industry and how harsh the environment is that you're working in.
Yeah, I definitely have worn clothes that within 3 months have lost their color and ripped, and, you definitely don't hold the test of time. And if we're thinking about whether we're investing in the right equipment, then, the frequency that you have to restock and rebuy something, it all adds up. So if you can get a quality product that can last longer, even though it might be a little bit more than the cheaper product to start with, you won't have to keep repurchasing it because it's ripping or, losing its color and stuff like that. And so, I guess that's a massive part of the way that KingGee has been doing it with, all of history.
100%. I guess what also makes us unique is that we do specific batch testing. So every time we manufacture a fabric, we actually test per batch. So we know we could be testing every 1,000 meters of fabric or 3,000 meters of fabric. We don't just approve a fabric once and then no longer test it. We nominate the fabric mills that we use, so we know exactly who's making our fabrics and where they're getting made. We actually nominate everything from the buttons that get used on the garment to the threads they use, to the dyes that they use, to who makes it, where they make it, and we have traceability. So it puts a lot of pressure back on the manufacturers to make sure that they're adhering to all of our strict standards, because we can trace every part of the production down the line. And our end goal is to make sure that you're safe all the time. So we don't want your shirts fading quickly where you don't replace them and you end up not being, you're not being seen because you're wearing a shirt that's only 3 months old and yet it's lost all of its color. So for us, we take a lot of pride in what we do and really want to emphasize that we want you to go home safe back to your families, and we need to make sure that our apparel is there for you to do that.
Amazing. Well, thanks for that, Matt. That's been really awesome, hearing the vast, history and what you've been working on and the innovation in workwear and responsibilities and regulations and everything that we've covered today. We've got a couple of questions from our members. We did put it out to the membership base. And there's a couple of questions we want to make sure that we cover. So the first one is, currently there isn't really a defined brand for roofer workwear. Is there any interest in KingGee or other, brands to be able to appeal for that market? And if not, why not? Is there a specific challenge around roofing that we've got to cover?
No, not at all. I guess, KingGee is a specialist workwear brand, so we want to make sure that we can cover off all of the specialist industries. We did dip our toes in this, excuse a pun, with the Grip 3000 shoe, which had a gum rubber sole, which obviously gives the guys a little bit more traction when they are up on site. We have recently launched a human-centered design team through our R&D process within our business, and we will happily reach out to anyone that's in the roofing industry to get a few more insights into what they actually need for their industry. We love to develop product in conjunction with specialists within their field. We would love to explore that further. At the moment, like I say, we just have the Grip 3000 shoe, but definitely keen to explore more into the apparel side of the business too. In terms of why not, I guess, us just gaining the insights from the people as to what specific needs they have, and we can obviously then develop a product around that, because there definitely is a big market for it, and we do see housing continue to grow within Australia. Definitely keen to look into that further.
Yeah, 100%. I guess the big thing would be just the grippiness of the shoe. I guess it would, if someone slips, it all comes back to the shoe they were wearing as well. So it's a bit of a challenging one. We got to get it right. And definitely the way that you work on the roof as well is a big part of that. Another question we had is, KingGee has been around for decades, but recently I'm seeing workwear space become incredibly crowded with new players. What does KingGee do to stay relevant in the market?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and probably one of the most challenging parts of our job. I think so within KingGee, we have very, very different ranges, targeting different age demographics within our range. So, we have ranges like Trade and Fuse, which are aimed at that younger demographic, where they're slightly tighter fitting pants and more streamlined, so you can wear them straight from the site to the pub. But then we've also got our older, more heritage ranges, like our Originals range, where the product hasn't changed over years and can still cater for that original wearer that we've had for many, many years.
Yes, absolutely. And I've just in my own businesses realized the essential nature of having that consistency with the delivery of something without changing it too much, where it can just throw all of those existing customers out. So that makes sense. Yeah. With your research and development department, before we wrap it up, I just want to find out, what is the most weird thing that's ever been brought to you? Like, it's like this random boots with wings on it. Like, what's the thing that...
There's been a lot of crazes for incorporating fans into jackets, whether it's blowing air on you to try and keep you cool. So inbuilt fan systems, LED lights going into product, a lot of the AI or technology coming in. So having proximity sensors or GPSs built into garments, which I don't think is too far away, to be honest. So a lot of what we might think is absurd at the time, as technology evolves and as in product engineering becomes a bigger thing, I think technologies could start getting more and more incorporated into our products. There's always somebody who's got a great idea around a product, and I guess we just got to try and put a commercial sense to what that idea is. And some of them are really great, and others, may be a little bit advanced for our time.
That is fascinating. Yeah, definitely. Having the GPS in the work clothes to understand where your workers are and how they're moving throughout the day, and whether there's opportunity to improve the work environment or even efficiency, things like that while on site. That could be really fascinating, because you can get the vehicle tracking that gets them to site, but actually seeing what happens on site is pretty hard to do.
Yeah, and even things, having built-in temperature control, so you can see when a person's body temperature has reached its max and they're no longer fit to continue working in those harsh conditions, or how much moisture your body's lost, or how much moisture has gone into the garment. So we can work out whether people are hydrating properly. So it's a really exciting space that we can start pushing into, and KingGee is definitely exploring that, being one of the leaders in the workwear market.
I love technology. That sounds super exciting to me. But really appreciate you coming on, Matt, and thanks for everything that KingGee does and everything you do there and the team. It's really pleasure having you on the show, and look forward to catching up soon.
Awesome. Thanks very much for having me, and thank you very much to all of our loyal customers out there. We appreciate the support. Thank you.
Thank you. See you guys. Hey guys, it's Greg here. Thanks for listening to the podcast. For me, growing my trade business was extremely hard. It cost me millions of dollars, so much time trying to figure out what was the right way to do business, and emotionally feeling like I'm letting myself, my partner, and my family down by not knowing how to run my business properly. But I kept working hard and overcame those challenges and created systems and solutions that minimize those mistakes for myself and my team as we grew. Now, Response Electricians, go and Google it. We've got over 1,700 reviews on Google. We've won awards like Electrician of the Year and Service Business of the Year, both state and nationally. I sat on the National Board of Directors for Master Electricians Australia for 2 years, created a real solid awareness of the industry and the construction industry and the challenges you face. And the business runs autonomously over in Perth while I live my life working on the academy in Byron Bay. And I help people like you create freedom from your business as well. Now, having coached and trained thousands of trade business owners, we've developed the Freedom Fighters program. It's a guided pathway in a hybrid training and coaching system that provides you with the right information and steps to take to create freedom, not in years, but now. You can actually create more freedom from your business sooner than you think. So click the link and have a free strategy session with one of our academy experts to fully understand how you can create more time freedom from your trade business, generating more profit, better culture, and more growth in less time.